with all the information that's available now and these narratives that do get discussed, like what you're saying, what we're talking about, what you talk about on your show, that more people are informed of that now, so it makes it more difficult for them to do that, and ultimately that stuff will diminish over time.
It's just the people with actual power don't give much of a fuck of what I have to say or others like me have to say.
But they give a fuck about the American people. If the American people don't vote them in anymore because they're upset about that.
Well, this is more what we call the deep state. So CIA, like the people behind the scenes, the Pentagon, the people who are sort of there from administration to administration and they're not dependent on elections. Like these are the people who they throw the book at a guy like that, you know? Because if you leak something that makes them look good, it's fine that you just leak classified information. You leak something that makes them look bad like Daniel Hale did, and they'll rain holy hell on you. It's
very disturbing when you find out these egregious missteps of justice where people get imprisoned for leaking information and discussing information, or the Stephen Dosinger case.
Oh, yes, that guy. We've had him on Crystal Kyle and Friends. Amazing story.
Crazy.
Yeah, he basically is like, if you really get down to the bottom line
Explain to people what happened.
Yeah, so he was imprisoned for basically showing how, I think it was Chevron, one of the big oil companies, flat out poisoned, I think it was Peru. You might want to fact check me on that. I'm not sure it was Peru, but it was one South American country. They basically like poisoned the water supply there. They were doing all these terrible practices, polluting everything. And he stood up against them in court and won. And then basically, you know, the empire struck back and went after him, and he ended up in prison.
Yeah.
Basically for blowing the whistle on this and getting him out.
So here it is.
Ecuador. I'm sorry. There you go. Not Peru.
So Dosinger, an American attorney known for his legal battles with Chevron, particularly Anguinda versus Texaco Inc. and other cases which he represented over 30,000 farmers and indigenous people who suffered environmental damage and health problems caused by the oil drilling in the Lago Agrio oil field of Ecuador. The Ecuadorian court awarded the plaintiffs $9.5 billion.
Yeah.
$11.5 billion in 2021 in damages, which led Chevron to withdraw its assets from Ecuador and launch legal action against Dosinger in the U.S. In 2011, Chevron filed, so this has been going on for 12 fucking years, filed a RICO anti-corruption suit against Dosinger, which is wild, in New York City. The case was heard by U.S. District Judge Louis A. Kaplan, who determined that the ruling of the Ecuadorian court could not be enforced in the U.S. because it was procured by fraud, bribery, and racketeering activities.
Now, that's all bullshit, just so everybody knows. There was no fraud, no bribery, no racketeering. What happened was the people who were corrupt went after him and said he was corrupt.
Yeah.
And the judge was corrupt who put him behind bars, and he just recently got out.
Yeah.
But this guy went through fucking hell because he exposed that Chevron was flat out poisoning people.
It's crazy. So he was placed under house arrest in 2019 while awaiting trial on charges of criminal contempt of court, which arose during his appeal against Kaplan's RICO decision when he refused to turn over electronic devices he owned to Chevron's forensic experts. In July 2021, U.S. District Judge Loretta Preska found him guilty, and Dosinger was sentenced to 6 months in jail in October 2021. While Dosinger was under house arrest in 2020, 29 Nobel laureates described the actions taken by Chevron against him as judicial harassment. Human rights campaigners called Chevron's actions an example of strategic lawsuit against public participation. SLAP lawsuit. In April 2021, 6 members of Congressional Progressive Caucus demanded that the Department of Justice review Dosinger's case. In September 2021, the United Nations High Commissioner of Human Rights stated that the pretrial detention imposed on Dosinger was illegal and called for his release. Having spent 45 days in prison and a combined total of 993 days under house arrest, Dosinger was released on April 25th, 2022.
So let me also add, so yes, he spent 993 days under house arrest. Now, the actual laws they're accusing him of breaking, it would have been like a max, I'm going to butcher this, but it was like a month or something. So they kept him under house arrest for 993 days. Then he actually went to jail. But even if he had gotten a max sentence, if he had the trial right away, it would have been like a month or something like that.
And more importantly, what that does is it scares the fuck out of anybody that's thinking about doing something like that in the future.
That's exactly the point. The empire will strike back.
Yeah.
And they do.
Especially in a situation like that where there's clear evidence that they
Undeniable.
polluted that area.
Undeniable.
Fucking crazy.
Look, this is the impact, and this is my big thing. This is the impact of money on politics.
Yeah.
This is the way our system works. I mean, when you have giant corporations and billionaires pay the politicians in campaign contributions, then when those politicians get in there, they're going to represent the corporations and the billionaires and not the will of the people. I mean, you could look at any public opinion poll and it will tell you some very clear preferences among Democrats, Republicans, among everybody, and we don't get those things into law. The stuff that goes into law is a new tax break or subsidy for a giant corporation or another bailout for Wall Street. Like, that's the stuff that's prioritized because that's what these people are getting paid by. Like Nancy Pelosi, for example, she has like an 18% approval rating. She was a leader of the Democrats for so long, all because she raised the most money. She has the most connections with the corporations and the billionaires, and so that's why she's at the top of the party. It's not because she actually has people who like her and support her.
Yeah, it's spooky. It's spooky because there's no clear path to get money out of politics.
So there is.
Yeah?
Well, one way is to do a constitutional amendment, but that's difficult because you need to get like 3/5 of the state. It's a whole process. It's very difficult.
And you're
but really
have to get the people that are involved in it to agree.